My daughter-in-law pointed at me in my own dining room and said, "Get out. You weren't invited." For a second, I thought she was joking. We were standing by the table I had polished that morning, surrounded by the smell of roast chicken and cinnamon candles. My son said nothing, just stared at his plate like a child caught doing something wrong. That was the moment I realized I was a stranger in the house I bought, built, and paid for. I had woken at 4:30 a.m. to cook Tara's favorite enchiladas. Spent the last of my pension on groceries. I even arranged wildflowers in mason jars because she once said she liked rustic decor. I wanted so badly to belong, to be part of their family dinner, not the outsider they tolerated. When she told me to leave, I stood frozen, holding the serving spoon. The laughter around the table faded into silence. And in that silence, my heart broke quietly, without witnesses, without rescue. Welcome to Life Voices, where family drama turns into late-life justice. If you're watching, tell us your city in the comments, we always read them. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. The old alarm clock chirped twice, and I got up, like always, without complaint. The kitchen was dark and warm, my little yellow lamp spread a soft circle of light over the counter, my handwritten recipes stacked neatly beside the stove. Tara loved chicken enchiladas, she'd said so the first summer she moved in. I remembered. Women my age rarely forget small things, favorite flavors, dates, moods in someone's voice. I rinsed the rice, soaked the beans, thawed the broth. The radio hummed softly with old songs about loyalty and coming home. While the oven heated, I scrubbed the hallway floor so no one would slip. I liked things to shine. That was how I fought loneliness, with polish and order. Money was tight. Yesterday I'd withdrawn the last of my pension, put it in an envelope, and gone to the grocery store. I stood in line twice because I'd remembered that Tara preferred the smaller green limes they sell near the register. Silly? Maybe. But I wanted tonight to be right. I wanted the dinner to be warm, the spices soft, the table beautiful. Maybe then they'd see me. Not as the help, not as free babysitting, but as family. I set the table myself. White tablecloth, ironed yesterday. 2 cinnamon candles. Small jars of wildflowers tied with twine. Each plate had a name card written in my careful handwriting. On my son's, I drew a tiny wave. When he was little, we used to build boats from bark by the river. "Mom, when I grow up, I'll take care of you," he'd say, holding my hand with his sticky fingers. Morning quiet is my time. I sifted flour, chopped onions, stirred sauce, and in my mind, I watched a film. They would come in smiling, Tara would laugh and say, "This smells like home." They'd nod to the guests. "Linda made it, she's the best cook." My heart would bloom. I knew it was naive, but hope is sometimes stronger than medicine. My husband died when Evan was 11. A single phone call shattered our life like glass. I worked 2 jobs, baking at night, cleaning in the morning, so my son could have everything other boys did. I taught him to iron shirts, to pick apples without bruises, to say thank you to bus drivers. We built our small world on honesty and gratitude. When he brought Tara home, I was happy. She was sharp, stylish, confident. I thought, good. My boy won't be alone. He'll have laughter, a home, warm dinners. I gave them the biggest bedroom because they were starting a family, and I took the small one. I never counted how many times I babysat so they could rest. I just loved. That's how I was raised. Love isn't math. I dreamed that tonight would be a turning point. That we'd finally sit together as equals. That I'd no longer be background noise. I even wore my pale yellow dress, the one they used to call my sunshine dress. It doesn't fit the same, my waist left long ago. But the color still makes the kitchen glow. While the sauce simmered, I polished the picture frames. One held Evan on his first day of school. Another, our house before we renovated it together. I smiled at the glass. So many nights I'd fought exhaustion and bills, yet somehow always managed. I believed, if I don't give up, God won't either. By noon, I went outside and picked rosemary sprigs. My neighbor called over the fence, "Company tonight, Linda?" "Yes," I said. "Family dinner." Back inside, I rolled the warm tortillas, wrapping the filling tight, the way I once wrapped my baby in his blanket. Everything had to hold together, not fall apart. That was my silent wish for us, too. By evening, I was tired, but happy tired. I slid the enchiladas into the oven, wiped my hands on my apron, and sent a small text. Dinner at 7. See you soon. I didn't dare write please. I didn't dare seem needy. Just see you soon. Just Mom. I walked through the rooms again. Blankets folded, cushions plumped, the sofa draped with the knitted throw I'd made last winter. I turned on the lamps, letting warm light pour like honey. The house looked gentle, like it was waiting to forgive. I set out the salad, crossed off the last item in my notebook. Almost done. All that was left was to welcome them. In that quiet pause between effort and hope, I sat in my rocking chair, folded my hands, and whispered, maybe this time they'll see me. Maybe this time they'll thank me. Maybe they'll include me. I wasn't asking for much, just to be called by name, to hear my son say, Mom, stay. I thought I'd earned that through years of quiet devotion. I believed kindness wasn't a debt, that people remembered it longer than they remembered anger. When I heard the front door open, my heart leapt. I untied my apron, smoothed my hair. Tara was laughing into her phone, my son carrying a bag of wine. Behind them came guests, new faces, unfamiliar perfume. I stepped forward, ready to greet, to hug, to feed, to belong. And as the oven's heat wrapped the room in that soft, buttery smell, I still believed, truly believed, that this time would be different. That this time, I wouldn't be invisible. That love would finally be enough. They arrived like guests at a party I hadn't been invited to. Tara's perfume filled the hallway before I even saw her, sharp, expensive, the kind that clings to the air like ownership. My son followed, avoiding my eyes. Behind them, 3 strangers laughed as they carried trays and bottles. Linda, could you move that chair? Tara said, not even a hello. She waved her manicured hand toward the end of the table. We need more room for everyone. Everyone. I hesitated, holding the serving spoon. Of course, I said softly and dragged the chair aside. My chair, the one I sat in every Sunday when this house was still mine. The oven timer chimed. Dinner's ready, I said, trying to sound cheerful. I opened the oven, the smell of cheese and chili wrapping around me like comfort. I turned, smiling. I made your favorite, Tara. She didn't let me finish. Oh, you didn't have to cook. We already ordered catering. Thai food. You know how Evan loves it. Her words dropped like stones into the silence. The guests exchanged awkward glances. My son stood behind her, eyes fixed on the floor. But, I began, glancing at the bubbling tray. I thought. Tara smiled the way people smile when they're about to hurt you politely. You've been forgetful lately. Maybe you got confused about the plans. Tonight's just a small gathering with our friends. Our friends, not family. She turned to the others. Everyone, this is Linda. She helps out around the house sometimes. The laughter quieted. One of the guests gave me a pitying smile. Oh, that's so sweet. My grandma still likes to keep busy too. I felt my knees weaken. My son finally looked up, met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. He didn't say a word. I'll just get the enchiladas out of the way, I whispered. My voice sounded foreign, distant. I lifted the hot dish and carried it toward the counter, pretending I didn't see Tara whisper something that made the guests giggle. When I turned back, the table was full, my plates, my candles, my napkins, but no seat for me. I cleared my throat. Should I leave? Tara said lightly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You weren't invited to this one. The spoon slipped from my hand, clattering onto the floor. Nobody moved. Even the laughter froze midair. My son said nothing. He just stared at his plate like a man waiting for thunder to pass. Tara, I began, my heart pounding in my ears, this is my house. She tilted her head. Technically, it's ours now, remember? Evan and I pay the bills. It's time you learned to share the space. Her voice was syrupy, almost kind, but her eyes were cold. One of the guests shifted uncomfortably. Maybe she can stay, a woman murmured. Tara waved it off. It's fine. She's just confused. Happens sometimes, poor thing. Old people forget their place. Something inside me cracked, quiet but sharp. I looked at my son again, waiting for him to stop it, to defend me, to remember who I was. But he just exhaled, slow and tired, and said nothing. The room blurred. The edges of the furniture seemed to shimmer. My breath caught, shallow. I bent to pick up the spoon, my fingers trembling, and heard someone whisper, "Is she okay?" I stood up straight. I'm fine, I said. My voice was steady now, low, almost calm. I put the spoon in the sink, wiped my hands on a towel, and turned toward the door. No one stopped me. The night air outside was cold, crisp with the smell of rain. I walked to the edge of the porch and stood there, listening to the muffled laughter through the walls I'd painted myself. Through the window, I saw Tara sitting in my seat, laughing, raising her glass. My son leaned toward her, his hand resting on the back of her chair, the same way his father once rested his hand on mine. I remembered that summer years ago when he was 12. He'd scraped his knee at the river and cried until I wrapped him in a towel. "Mom," he'd said through tears, "I'll always take care of you." Now he couldn't even look at me. I sat on the porch step, my apron still tied around my waist, my hands resting uselessly on my knees. The sounds of their dinner faded into music and chatter. I caught fragments through the open window, her laugh, his low voice, a toast. "To family," someone said, and they all cheered. The word hit me like a slap. Inside, the light was golden, warm. Out here, everything was gray. The garden I'd planted last spring swayed in the wind, the flowers bowing their heads. I told myself to breathe, to stand up, to not cry, but the tears came anyway, hot and quiet. For years, I believed that love could outlast disappointment. That if I kept giving, they'd remember who I was, the woman who held them up when everything else fell apart. But now, standing in the dark with my hands still smelling of garlic and cumin, I finally understood. Love doesn't mean you're safe from cruelty. The door opened behind me. Evan stepped out, hesitating. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd say something, anything. "Mom," he murmured, not meeting my eyes, "don't take it personally. Tara just wants boundaries." Boundaries. The word felt clinical, like a diagnosis. He reached into his pocket and handed me a folded napkin. "There's extra food inside if you're hungry." I looked at the napkin, then at him. "I'm not hungry," I said. He nodded once and went back inside, closing the door behind him. The latch clicked, small, final, merciless. The house fell silent again, except for the muffled laughter that kept spilling through the walls. My house. My laughter, stolen. My son's voice, belonging to someone else now. I sat there until the lights began to go out one by one. Then I stood, brushed the crumbs of dust from my apron, and whispered into the night, "You forgot your place, too, Evan. You just don't know it yet." It didn't happen all at once. It wore me down in thin, mean slices, like a knife taking shavings off a stick until nothing sturdy remains. The first week after the dinner, my rocking chair disappeared. I found it in the garage between paint cans and a cracked ice chest, its cushions dusty, the wood nicked. "We're modernizing," Tara said when I asked. "That chair squeaks on video calls." I had rocked my boy to sleep in that chair. I had held fever and fear there. Now it was clutter. Then the kitchen. My yellow walls, my forever sunshine, turned slate gray while I was at the market. I came home to drop cloths and the sharp smell of paint. "Gray photographs better," Tara explained. "The yellow makes everything look dated." She didn't say you look dated, but I heard it anyway. She posted a before and after on her account. In the comments someone wrote, "Who let Grandma pick that yellow?" Tara replied with a laughing emoji. Evan liked the post. I kept cooking. I kept paying. Groceries, paper towels, the new toaster when the old one suddenly died. "Free help," Tara joked to her friends one afternoon. I was slicing lemons and pretended not to hear. The joke was that I cost nothing, even as the receipts piled up in my purse like small apologies I owed to myself. At a barbecue, she introduced me to a couple from his office as the lady who lives here. Not his mother. Not Linda. The lady. I felt a small wobble in my knees, restored my balance with a smile, and asked if they preferred sweet tea or unsweetened. They chose unsweetened. I nodded like a waitress. At night, whispers seeped under my door. She rearranged the pantry again. She leaves the lights on. She should be grateful, we pay plenty of bills. The word grateful stuck to me like burrs. I had built the deck they took pictures on, I had polished the floors their guests praised. Gratitude, it seemed, was a one-way street with no turnarounds. Once I found a stack of my old recipe cards in the trash, flecked with coffee grounds. "We use the app now," Tara said, breezy. "It's organized. I washed the cards in the sink like wounded birds, laid them flat to dry, and put them in a shoebox under my bed. Paper remembers what people forget. When I placed a folded blanket on the back of the sofa, Evan sighed. Mom, stop acting like this house is only yours. We pay bills now. The sentence was measured, practiced. I could hear where she'd underlined it in his head. I swallowed the reply that rose. I paid with more than money, and asked if he wanted tea. He said no and escaped to the gray kitchen. The bruises weren't purple, they were invisible. The way the remote vanished from my table. The way my mail arrived opened by accident. The quiet correction when I said, our garden, and Tara said, the yard. Mine became ours. Ours became theirs, and then I became theirs, too, something to manage, schedule, explain. On a Tuesday, a handyman arrived without warning to adjust the door, and my bedroom lock disappeared. Safety, Tara said. What if you fall? That night I slept with a chair propped under the knob, not because I feared them, I told myself, but because I missed the sound of a click that used to mean this space is mine. But when it hurt most, my mind slipped backward, hunting for kindness like a tongue searching for the memory of a tooth. Little Evan at 5, head heavy on my lap after a fever finally broke. The fan turning, the window opened to summer crickets. Mom, he whispered, cheeks hot from sleep, when I grow up, I'll take care of you. His fingers, damp and small, curled around mine the way vines hold to trellis. I believed him. I built a life on those 4 words, laid them like stones across a river and crossed. I tried to speak to him gently. Evan, the way she talks about me, he pinched the bridge of his nose. Please don't start. She's stressed. And you? I asked. Are you stressed enough to forget who I am? He stared at the floorboards we sanded together the summer he was 12. Mom, you're making everything tense. I nodded, because agreeing is the cheapest piece. One afternoon I found Tara in my closet, sorting hangers. We're donating some of these, she said. They're not your colors. She held up my sunshine dress like a dead canary, then shrugged and set it aside. I took it back after she left and pressed the fabric to my face. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and August. They began locking their bedroom door. Conversations hushed when I entered. The calendar I kept on the fridge vanished, replaced by a shared digital one I was never invited to join. Dinners shifted later, then out. We'll grab something, Evan would text. Food cooled on the stove like a question no one wanted to answer. Even the dog learned the new order. He stopped sleeping by my door and curled under their table, waiting for scraps. When I called, he hesitated, then looked to Tara before deciding whether love was allowed. A neighbor asked, "How are you settling in with the kids?" I opened my mouth to say they moved in with me, but the sentence felt old-fashioned, defiant. "We're figuring it out," I said instead, which was true in the way a bruise is true, a record of contact without context. I started counting small silences, the thanks not said, the greetings not given, the chairs not offered. I stacked them in my head like plates, neat and breakable. On top of that stack, like a saucer no one uses, I placed his promise, "I'll take care of you," and prayed the tower wouldn't fall. But houses have a way of telling the truth you try to ignore. And mine whispered every night, in the creak of stairs and the hum of vents, "You are becoming a guest in the home you made." It was a Saturday morning when the truth began to show itself, not with shouting or tears, but through a sound. A laugh. Tara's laugh, from the kitchen. I was in the garden, trimming wilted petals, when I heard her voice drift through the open window. Sharp, bright, edged with cruelty. "Can you believe her?" she said between giggles. She actually asked if we wanted her to cook Sunday dinner again. As if we'd survive another one of her heavy casseroles. I swear, that woman thinks this is still her house. Another voice, my son's, followed, low, uncertain. "She means well." "Oh, please," Tara snapped. "She means control. Don't worry. We'll get what we need out of this place before she forgets where she keeps the deed." I froze. My scissors slipped from my hand and landed in the soil. The air around me seemed to shrink. Before she forgets where she keeps the deed. I stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the dirt, pretending to weed. When they left for their errands, I went inside and stood in the quiet kitchen. The word deed echoed in my head like a dropped coin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every small noise sounding like betrayal. By dawn, I got up and walked to the attic. The air was thick with dust and memory. Boxes lined the walls. Evan's toys, old photo albums, my husband's tools. I opened a few, looking for something, though I wasn't sure what. Maybe proof that this house, this life, was still mine. In the corner sat my late husband's lunchbox. A dented metal thing, painted navy blue, with his initials scratched on top. I hadn't opened it since the week after the funeral. My hands trembled as I unlatched it. Inside, wrapped in a faded handkerchief, were a few papers, a small photograph of us on our wedding day, and a manila envelope. The label read, Property Title, 1987, notarized. My breath caught. I unfolded the pages carefully. There it was, in black ink and legal language, the deed. The house was mine, fully mine, paid in full, protected, untouchable. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at it. I thought about my husband, how he used to keep every receipt, every document filed neatly in labeled boxes. Paper keeps you safe, he used to say. People forget, but signatures don't. I smiled through tears. He had known. Maybe not about this moment, but about life, how it twists, how people change. He had left me a lifeline, folded and hidden inside an old lunchbox. I spent the day quietly reading, learning. I looked up the legal terms, the protections, the clauses. I called the county office to confirm ownership. The clerk's voice was polite and certain. Yes, ma'am. The title is under Linda Reynolds. Has been since 1987. No liens, no co-owners. That confirmation was like oxygen. For months, I had been shrinking, smaller, quieter, invisible in my own home. But now, a new stillness settled in. Not fear, not anger, power. That evening, Tara and Evan came home late, carrying shopping bags and talking loudly. I was sitting at the table with a cup of tea, the documents neatly stacked beside me. I didn't say a word. She glanced at the papers. What's that? Just old memories, I said, folding them carefully. Things your father left behind. She shrugged and went upstairs, heels clicking. My son followed. I heard her laugh again, but it didn't reach me this time. I just listened, calm and quiet, knowing something she didn't. Later, when the house fell silent, I went to the kitchen and opened the window. The night air smelled of rain and soil. I placed the papers back into the lunchbox, slid it under my bed, and whispered to the dark, not yet. But soon. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and for the first time in months, the sunlight didn't feel harsh. It felt like permission. I watched Tara rush around, late for something, snapping at Evan to hurry. She barely looked at me as she left. After the door closed, I sat at the table, sipping coffee from my husband's old mug. On the rim, a tiny crack, just enough to notice, not enough to ruin it. It felt symbolic somehow, still whole, just change. Then I remembered the voice note. Tara was careless with her phone, always leaving it on counters, screens lit, messages half played. That afternoon, while tidying, I saw it lying on the dining table, glowing with a blue notification. A voice message, half played. Her friend's name on top. Curiosity wasn't my sin that day, survival was. I pressed play. We're not leaving until we squeeze this house dry, Tara's voice laughed. He's too soft to see it. Once it's sold, we'll finally have money for that new place. I stopped the recording. My hands didn't shake this time. I simply deleted nothing, saved everything. Then I wiped the counter, as if clearing the space for what would come next. By evening, I'd already made a copy of the deed and tucked it into a sealed envelope labeled, in case. I didn't know yet how I'd use it. But I knew the tide had turned. That night, as the wind brushed the curtains, I looked around my quiet bedroom and whispered, "You tried to erase me, but you forgot. I built the foundation you're standing on." And for the first time in months, I slept without fear. They arrived on a Tuesday, late afternoon, when the light makes the dining room glow like warm honey. Tara swept in first, lips lacquered, heels slicing the floor. Behind her came a man with a leather folio and the restless eyes of someone who measures homes like livestock. "Linda," Tara sang, sugary and triumphant, "this is Kevin. He's here to do a quick walk through before the appraisal." I folded the dish towel and set it on the counter. "For what purpose?" She flashed a look at my son, who lingered in the doorway, already apologizing with his shoulders, and then back to me. For selling, of course. The market's perfect. We'll finally upgrade. Kevin offered a professional smile. Won't take long. I'll just need to see all rooms and outbuildings. No, I said. He blinked. Tara laughed. She's in one of her moods. It isn't a mood, I said. It's ownership. I pulled out a chair and sat, calm as steam off tea. On the table lay a manila folder, edges squared, papers clipped. I rested my palm on it like a hymn book. Kevin cleared his throat. Ma'am, your son and daughter-in-law informed me they're the decision-makers. My son is always welcome to offer opinions, I said. Decisions are made by the owner. Tara's smile sharpened. We pay the bills now. Your name is only on the past. I slid the folder toward the middle of the table and opened it with the same care you'd give to a sleeping child. The deed lay on top, crisp as winter air, the notary seal winking under the lamp. Read, I said. Kevin leaned in. His finger tracked the lines. His posture changed first, the subtle retreat of a man who's stepped into the wrong garden. This appears comprehensive, he murmured. Sole ownership. No encumbrances. Correct, I said. Recorded in 1987, reaffirmed in 2004 when we paid off the last cent early. My late husband believed paper keeps you safe. It seems he was right. Tara's laugh fractured. Titles can be updated. Not this one, I said, and gently placed a second sheet beside it. A letter from the county confirming everything I'd already confirmed by phone. Also, I added, sliding my phone across, here's a voice note I found on the dining table. Would you like to hear yourself? Her face flickered. That's private. So is my home, I said, and pressed play. Her recorded voice poured into the room, bright and cruel. We're not leaving until we squeeze this house dry. Kevin closed his folio. I think I have everything I need, he said to no one in particular, and retreated toward the door with the caution of a man backing away from a cliff. Kevin, Tara snapped, we're not finished. Yes, we are, I said kindly. Thank you for coming. He escaped with a muttered apology. The door clicked. The house exhaled. Tara rounded on me. You had no right. I have every right, I said. I've had it for decades. Evan finally spoke, voice thin. Mom, can't we discuss this without making it a scene? There is no scene, I said. There are only facts. I tapped the deed. This house will not be sold. This kitchen will not be appraised. And this table, I touched the wood we'd sanded together when he was 12, is where decisions are made by the person who paid for it. Tara folded her arms. And if we don't like your decision? I picked up the folder, squared the pages, then set them down again. The gesture felt ceremonial, like ringing a small bell. Then you don't live here. Silence widened, deep and clean. Evan stared at me as if I'd spoken another language. You're evicting us? I am setting a boundary, I said. Respect me, or remove yourselves. Tara's voice pitched higher. You wouldn't dare. I already did. I stood, not quickly, not dramatically, simply the way a tree rises from shade into its own light. You may stay under 3 conditions, I continued. 1. No renovations without my consent. 2. No guests who treat me like staff. 3. Any bill you pay is a kindness, not a claim. And if we refuse? Tara asked, breath tight. Then you have 30 days. Evan swallowed. 30, Mom? You may take 60, I said softly. But the decision is today. For a moment, no one moved. Outside, the wind lifted the rosemary and let it fall again. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a child laughed. Small sounds, ordinary life, as if the earth hadn't shifted under our feet. Tara grabbed her purse. Come on, Evan. We're leaving. He didn't move. She spun to him. Are you seriously hesitating? He looked at me, and for an instant I saw the boy who'd promised to take care of me, the boy who believed kitchens were countries and mothers their patient queens. Then he looked away. We'll talk tonight, he mumbled. Tonight works, I said. The documents will be here. So will I. Tara stormed down the hall, heels like hammers. The front door opened and slammed. Silence followed, vast and tender. Evan lingered, shame settling on his shoulders like dust. Mom, I know, I said. Me, too. He nodded, helpless, and went after his wife. I gathered the deed and returned it to its envelope, then to the lunchbox, then to the dark, cool safety beneath my bed. When I came back to the kitchen, the late sun had shifted, laying a gold stripe across the gray wall. I stood in that strip of light and breathed. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I set the table for one, poured tea into my husband's chipped mug, and ate my own supper while the house listened, a house that finally remembered my name. The silence that followed was the first real quiet the house had known in years. No footsteps stomping up the stairs, no slammed cabinet doors, no voices curling with irritation. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the hallway clock. For the first time, the walls didn't feel like they were holding their breath. Tara moved out within the month. Boxes stacked in the hall, perfume trailing after her like smoke. She didn't say goodbye. My son helped her load the last of the suitcases into a silver SUV, his shoulders hunched as if the weight of every decision he hadn't made sat there. When the car pulled away, the dust rose and then settled. I stood on the porch, one hand on the rail I'd painted 20 years earlier, and whispered, "Peace, finally." That night I slept with the window open. The crickets sang, and the air smelled of rain and freedom. In the morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead and started to reclaim what was mine. The first thing I did was open all the curtains. Light flooded the rooms like a guest finally welcomed home. I took a paint roller from the garage and carried it into the kitchen. The walls were that cold, modern gray Tara loved, soulless, like a waiting room. I stirred a can of paint, sunshine yellow, the exact shade it had been before. Each stroke of color felt like forgiveness, not for them but for myself. By the time the sun set, the room glowed again, warm and alive. I stood barefoot on the drop cloth, hair sticking to my forehead, and laughed until my throat ached. Next came the garden. I knelt in the dirt and tore out the weeds that had crept in while I'd been too afraid to claim the soil. My hands ached, but the ache was proof that I still had strength. I planted rosemary, tulips, and bright marigolds, flowers that don't apologize for their color. Inside, I rearranged the furniture the way it had once been. My rocking chair came back from the garage. I polished the arms, patched the worn cushion, and set it near the window that faced the garden. The first evening I sat in it again, the floor creaked in the old familiar rhythm, like the house was sighing with me. The days began to fall into gentle order. Morning tea at the porch table. Letters from old friends I'd lost touch with. I started volunteering at the community library, reading to children on Saturdays. Their small faces lifted to me with such trust that sometimes my voice trembled. People there called me Miss Linda, not the lady who lives here. The difference was everything. Weeks passed before Evan returned. He stood at the gate one afternoon, thinner, older, a baby carrier in his hands. My heart clenched before I even saw the child's face. A girl, maybe 6 months old, with eyes like his father's, dark, curious, forgiving. "Her name's Grace," he said. Tara had left him. Of course she had. She'd taken the furniture, the savings, even the car, but not the baby. Maybe because love that costs effort was never her kind of investment. He looked lost. "Mom, I didn't know where else to go." I opened the door wider. "Then you came to the right place." He stepped inside, cradling Grace. The baby reached toward the yellow wall, as if drawn to the light. I smiled. She knows warmth when she sees it. We didn't speak of Tara. Not that day. Instead, I made tea, and while the kettle hummed, I studied my son's face. He looked tired, but softer. Humbled. The arrogance that used to live behind his eyes was gone, replaced by something quieter, remorse, maybe, or understanding. "Mom," he said finally, his voice rough, "I'm sorry. For everything. For letting her." I held up a hand. "No explanations. Just lessons. That's how life teaches us." He nodded, tears clinging to his lashes. "Can we stay? Just until I figure things out?" I touched his arm gently. "You can stay as long as you remember the rules. Love doesn't mean ownership, and kindness doesn't mean weakness." He smiled through the guilt. I remember. That evening, Grace slept in the small room that once held Evan's toys. I watched him through the cracked door, humming to her softly, and thought of all the years I'd spent fearing that my love had gone to waste. Yet here he was, bruised by his own mistakes, but home. Sometimes love doesn't return in the way you expect. Sometimes it limps back, carrying a child, asking for shelter. In the weeks that followed, the house filled with new sounds. The giggle of a baby, the clatter of bottles in the sink, my son's laughter returning like an old song. I'd walk past the mirror and see not a ghost but a woman alive, present, still capable of joy. One morning he found me sitting on the porch with Grace on my lap. The sunlight caught her hair, turning it the same honey shade his once was. "Mom," he said, "I don't deserve how good you are to me." I looked up at him and smiled. "Then be better. That's all the repayment I need." He bent to kiss my forehead. It had been years since he'd done that. I closed my eyes and let the moment sink deep, where old pain used to live. Now, when the evenings fall quiet, I rock in my chair, watch the lights flicker in the windows, and know that peace isn't the absence of people, it's the presence of respect. The house, once heavy with silence, now breathes with calm. I didn't lose my family, I only trimmed away the parts that forgot how to love. And from what remained, something tender began again. Some people think loneliness is the worst thing that can happen. It isn't. The worst thing is staying in a house where you've become invisible. Where your words echo but no one listens. I spent years mistaking silence for peace, obedience for love. I thought if I gave enough, they'd see me. But love built on fear of losing comfort isn't love at all, it's convenience. Now my mornings begin with laughter, not tension. I sip my coffee in the yellow kitchen I painted with my own hands, and the sunlight feels like it's on my side again. I didn't lose my family. I found myself, the woman who built, endured, and finally learned that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're dignity. Have you ever felt like a guest in your own home? Tell me in the comments, I'm listening. Subscribe for more family dramas. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from.